For nearly half a century now, the world has listened to Keith Richards' guitar and Mick Jagger's voice. Now Richards is letting his own voice be heard. Anthony Mason now with a Sunday Profile.
Every fall's different. I think it has to do with what kind of summer you have. Sometimes it's really spectacular, and other times it's kind of more muted like this.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Good evening.
It's sometimes said there are two Keith Richards.
They're French bulldogs. Those little red things.
Do you ever feel that there's this other guy, the mythological Keith Richards, who's kind of trailing around alongside of you?
He's on a ball and chain. His image is, carries a long shadow. Yeah, I love the guy dearly, but I'm still trying to find out who the hell he is.
Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name.
He is Keith to his fans, once dubbed the world's most elegantly wasted human. Survivor of countless drug busts, guitarist for the biggest rock band on the planet, and one half of Jagger and Richards. One of the most successful songwriting teams of the past half-century.
How would you describe your professional partnership?
I've never considered myself a professional, quite honestly.
Don't you worry about what's on your mind, oh man.
And then there's, well, the other Keith.
I get the sense that you're actually, in many ways, a very traditional guy.
Yes, this is what I keep trying to tell everybody.
That's the one we met in Connecticut. At the house he built 20 years ago to raise his two daughters with his wife, Patty Hansen.
Oh, the lemons, look at these.
Wow.
At home, he's the 67-year-old guitarist with the green thumb.
Hand grenades.
Who's responsible for these?
That's me.
You?
Yeah, it's amazing, really, isn't it? This is in my spare time I do this.
You grow lemons.
Yeah.
But then you realize the two Keiths are really one.
I've always planted things. I used to grow weed, but I was never there for the harvest, you know.
Under my thumb, the girl who once had me down.
If Keith Richards didn't exist, one critic wrote, rock and roll would have to invent him. And in a way, it has. In his best-selling memoir, Life, he dispels some of the myths, like the legendary tale he once had a total blood transfusion in Switzerland.
Yes, I created that myth.
So you didn't actually have your blood drained and replaced?
People wanted to believe that. You know, and I wouldn't swap this blood for nobody.
And confirms others.
The snorting of your father's ashes, which it is true. You did, in fact, do it.
I ingested my ancestor, yes.
It was an accident, he says. He planned to bury his father's ashes beneath an oak tree he was planting.
But as I took the lid off the box, fine bits of my dad flew onto the table. You know, like powder, you know. And honestly, I could not resist. I just scooped him up there, took out a straw, see you, Dad. And I did a little line of him. Yeah, I did that. And the rest of him is around this oak tree, which is growing incredibly well.
Bert and Doris Richards' only child grew up in Dartford, a working-class suburb of London. His grandfather, a weekend musician, loved to take Ricky, as he was called, to music stores.
Hey, Keith. Here's the place. Little guitar shop.
We took Keith to the Carmine Street Guitar Shop in New York, where owner Rick Kelly still makes guitars by hand in the back room. Keith used to spend hours in shops like this in London's theater district.
I would watch, and I would just sit there like, the Sorcerer's Apprentice or something, you know, and watching instruments being made, repaired, and the smell of the glue. You know,
Orchestra from the musicals would come to get their instruments
the West End theatres. Yeah, so they would be like repairing stuff for the pit orchestras, you know, and you see the little Italian guys that, you know, they're dicky, you know, their collars all rushing, my violin, my violin.
Richards would meet another kid with a passion for rhythm and blues at the Dartford train station.
The guy on the station called Mick Jagger.
He wrote about the encounter in a letter to his aunt.
April 1962. You sent this from home.
Mm-hmm. Mick is the greatest R&B singer this side of the Atlantic, and I don't mean maybe. I'm playing guitar, Chuck style.
Chuck Berry.
Yeah, that'll be Chuck Berry, yeah.
A few months later, the Rolling Stones were born. Their debut album would knock the Beatles off the top of the British charts. Jagger and Richards emerged as the songwriters. Mick came up with the lyrics, Keith delivered the riffs.
Does this stuff just sort of pop into your head at some point?
Yeah, they pop off the fingers. Actually.
Really?
Yeah, more than the head.
The Stones swaggered through the 60s as rock's irreverent bad boys, and the shy Keith became an unlikely icon, with a buccaneering attitude that said he was ready to try anything and apologize for nothing.
I see you're still smoking. How many vices do you have left? You've sort of whittled them away over the years.
Yeah, I'm down to the precious few now.
Do you miss any of them especially?
Not really, because you can't go back, and I mean, God, I used to love heroin. But what junkie didn't?
Play with me 'cause you played with fire.
Keith may be the only one who isn't surprised he's still here.
I have an amazing
Constitution,
an incredible system, an immune system, and so, you know, which is, I've always known, but it's convincing other people.
You said at one point that part of the reason that you took drugs was to hide.
Yeah, it's to get away from the flim-flam, from all of the unnecessary things about show business that seem to be important to show business people that I really never felt myself part of.
Busted repeatedly over the years, Richards once said, "I didn't have a problem with drugs, only with policemen."
You've often talked about no regrets, nothing. For you, what was the toughest thing you faced?
The toughest thing I faced was my son dying. 2 months old, I'm on the road and I get a phone call, you know, your son's dead.
In 1976, Tara, his third child with longtime girlfriend Anita Pallenberg, was found dead in his crib.
You do say in the book you feel like you deserted your post.
Yeah, it's supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't there.
By the end of the decade, Keith had finally cleaned up his act. But for much of the 80s, the Stones did not tour. Jagger wanted to go off on his own, and Richards felt betrayed.
You were pretty tough on him during that period.
Yeah, well, he was pretty tough on me as far as I'm concerned. You know, I mean, I'm leaving. You know, oh, thanks, pal. He'd set himself a separate agenda that didn't include any of us, and riding on the Stones' fame to do it. And I thought that was a cheap shot.
In the book, you basically say, we're not really friends anymore, but we'll always be brothers.
Yeah, yeah. The reason I say that probably is that we don't see a lot of each other when we're not working.
Do you wish you still did?
I would prefer it to be closer as guys, you know, but I don't like to socialize in the way that Mick does. Mick probably finds me far too serious and idealistic.
Yesterday don't matter if it's gone.
Mick and Keith. It's like a marriage with no divorce, Richards once said. Their child is the Rolling Stones.
There's a certain chemistry between Mick and myself that just clicks. You don't know quite how, and sometimes it doesn't. And there's many times, you know, I think, Mick, I've got the greatest song ever for you. And he goes, oh, I hate it.
Obviously, you have to believe in that chemistry because you keep going back to it.
Oh, yes, I do. My job is to turn Mick on. If I can turn Mick on, then Mick can turn the world on. Yeah, but something has to spark him. I don't know if I could handle it.
Working on his memoirs has kept Richards at home for much of the past few years.
Do you get a road itch?
You can feel an itch, but it depends who's going to scratch.
You've all got to scratch together, don't you?
Exactly. You know, I mean, this is...
Keith Richards is ready to start collecting material for Volume 2 of Life.